Every day, we walk past hundreds of people without really seeing them. A man delivering boxes in the rain. A woman mopping the floor just after midnight. An elderly person collecting grocery carts from a parking lot. We nod, maybe say thank you. Most times, we say nothing at all. But hidden among these ordinary lives are people who have changed the course of others' lives in the most extraordinary ways, quietly, without recognition, and often without reward. This is not a story about celebrities, not about billionaires or presidents. This is about the people you never knew were saving lives, while folding laundry, or sweeping hallways, or just being human when it mattered most. This is part one of a journey through real, powerful, and mostly unknown stories about invisible heroes. Chapter 1. The janitor WHO saved 8 lives at St. Elmo's Hospital in Chicago. Every night at 10:45 p.m., the ICU corridor would echo with a rhythmic squeak. It wasn't a life support alarm. It wasn't a doctor rushing down the hall. It was the wheels of a mop bucket, pushed by Marcus Bell, 63 years old, African American, stooped from years of labor, and wearing a janitor uniform that hadn't changed style since 1998. Marcus never went to medical school. He didn't understand advanced anatomy or the complexities of lung ventilation, but he knew when something looked off. For 11 years, Marcus had done something no one asked him to do. He checked every oxygen machine, every emergency button, every backup power switch in the ICU, every single night. Not because it was his job, but because 22 years earlier, his mother had died in that same hospital, alone. Because the oxygen system in her room failed and no one noticed until it was too late. He made a vow that night: no one else dies alone. Not if I can help it. He never told anyone. Not the nurses. Not the staff. Not even his supervisor. He would simply take a little longer mopping, linger by the machines, check the wires, adjust the oxygen tubes, and make silent notes on a folded napkin he kept in his pocket. He did this for 11 years. Then one night, a new administrator decided to install cameras in the ICU for monitoring purposes. That's when they saw him, stopping by each bed, touching the oxygen knobs, peeking behind machines, never interfering, never disrupting, but always watching. When a patient survived a sudden system failure because Marcus had reconnected a misaligned tube the night before, the hospital reviewed past logs. They found 7 more similar coincidences. 7 more lives, saved by a man no one had ever truly noticed. When they called him in to thank him, Marcus simply said, "I just didn't want anyone to go through what I did." And then he clocked out, back to his mop, and disappeared down the hallway. No viral videos, no news coverage, just a whisper of gratitude in the corridors of that hospital. The kind of gratitude that never fades. Chapter 2. The bus driver WHO disappeared in Baltimore. Every weekday morning, at 6:12 a.m. sharp, bus 302 would pull up to the corner of Linton Avenue and 5th Street. And every day, sitting in seat 4B by the window, was a high school sophomore named Daniel Vega. Daniel had a problem. He was depressed. So depressed that he hadn't spoken to anyone at school in almost a year. His grades were slipping. His father had left. And he had planned quietly, secretly to end his life. He had picked a date. It was the 3rd Thursday of October. But something happened that changed everything. That week, the usual bus driver was replaced. An older man. He didn't smile much. Didn't speak loudly. But every day, as Daniel boarded the bus, the man looked him in the eyes and said something different. "You're stronger than you think. You matter, young man. Whatever it is, you can make it through." It wasn't over the top. It wasn't motivational speaker energy. It was quiet, real, like he meant it. That Thursday, Daniel boarded the bus with the note still in his backpack. The note he planned to leave behind. But when he sat down, the bus driver leaned in and said just 5 words. "The world needs you here." Daniel didn't go through with his plan. He never told the man what he had intended. He never got his name. The next week, the driver was gone. When Daniel asked the bus depot, they told him, "We don't have anyone fitting that description. Must have been a temp." No record of who filled in that week. Gone, but not forgotten. To this day, Daniel credits the man with the voice of calm for saving his life. And now, Daniel Vega is a crisis counselor, helping others off the ledge, one quiet voice at a time. Chapter 3. The mechanic. Who built a legend. Rural Kansas. There's a town so small, it doesn't even show up on some maps. In that town lived a man named Benny Cook, a retired auto mechanic, known for being grumpy, solitary, and obsessed with scrap metal. When a 9-year-old girl named Lily lost her leg in a farming accident, her family couldn't afford a prosthetic. The insurance refused to cover it, calling it non-essential because she was under 10. They were devastated. Then one day, Benny knocked on their door with a strange contraption made of bike parts, a car shock absorber, and a piece of polished oak. "I made this for her," he said, without emotion. They stared, speechless. It wasn't beautiful. It looked like a sci-fi prop. But when Lily put it on, she could walk. She cried. Her parents cried. Benny didn't. He just nodded and left. Over the next 5 years, he adjusted the leg 7 times as she grew. He refused payment, refused interviews, refused to let anyone call it a gift. "It's just metal and math," he said. But it wasn't. It was life. It was possibility. It was walking into a school play without crutches for the first time. It was dancing at prom. When Benny passed away at 78, Lily spoke at his funeral. She didn't talk about mechanics. She talked about courage and what it means to be quietly brilliant in service of someone else. Chapter 4. The street vendor. Who fed the invisibly in the corner of 11th and Jefferson in San Diego. There's a small cart. It sells tamales. Every afternoon. Same spot. Same woman. Her name is Rosa. She's 67. She wears the same faded apron, a sun-wrinkled smile, and speaks in a soft Spanish accent. People come and go, buy lunch, say thank you. They don't know her story. What they don't see is what happens after the sun sets. Because every night, long after the cart is wheeled away, Rosa prepares a second batch of tamales, not to sell, but to give. To the homeless, to the forgotten, to the ones sleeping in doorways, near dumpsters, and behind abandoned lots. It started with one man, a young homeless veteran who used to sit across from her cart and politely wait until customers had left before asking if she had anything left over. One day, Rosa simply said, "Come back tonight. I'll have something warm for you." He came, and she gave him 3 tamales. Fresh, wrapped, hot. The next night, there were 2 people, then 4, then a dozen. Rosa never advertised it. She never asked for money. She never posted it online. She just cooked and gave every single night for 8 years. When asked why, Rosa once said, "I lost my son to addiction. He was on the streets. I couldn't save him. But maybe I can save someone else's child." To this day, many of those she fed are no longer homeless. Some volunteer at shelters. Some have jobs and come back just to say thank you. Rosa still sells tamales during the day, but every night, she still cooks for those who feel invisible. Chapter 5. The 12-year-old Who fed the Lionel Elliott Parks was 12 years old when he learned what elderly isolation meant. It came from a school project, something about interviewing seniors. He met Mr. Leonard, an 84-year-old man who had lost his wife 5 years earlier and hadn't spoken to another person in over a month. Elliot was stunned. He told his mom, then told his teacher, and then did something no one expected. He used his weekly $5 allowance to buy ingredients and cooked Mr. Leonard a simple lunch, macaroni, vegetables, and applesauce. He biked it over, knocked on the door, and said, "I brought lunch. Want to eat with me?" Mr. Leonard cried. The next week, Elliot added another person, then another. He started biking to different houses every Sunday, packing sandwiches, cookies, fruit with handwritten notes like, "You matter," or "You're not alone." Within 6 months, he was feeding 15 elderly people every weekend. His project became known locally as Sunday sit-downs, not because of the food, but because Elliot always stayed to talk. "It's not lunch," he once said. "It's company. That's what they're hungry for." By the time Elliot turned 15, he'd founded a small nonprofit to continue the work. Now, in his 20s, it's a nationwide program run by students, bringing meals and human connection to seniors who need it most. And it all started with a child, a bicycle, and a bowl of mac and cheese. Chapter 6. The Baker WHO rebuilt a family in Queens, New York. There's a small bakery called Sweet Grace. You wouldn't notice it unless you were really looking at squeeze between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The owner is a man named Ahmed. Quiet, polite, mid-40s, always wears a spotless apron. Years ago, a family of 4 new immigrants from Syria moved into a small apartment above his bakery. The father had been injured during the war. The mother spoke little English. The 2 daughters, 9 and 11, were shy and scared of the new world around them. They had nothing. Ahmed noticed. He began slipping extra pastries into their paper bag whenever the mother came down to buy bread. Then he started giving them mistake loaves. Fresh bread, he claimed, didn't rise right, but in truth were perfectly fine. Soon, he was leaving warm dinners outside their door every other night. When the oldest daughter turned 12, she was shocked to find a birthday cake at the doorstep, with her name spelled perfectly in icing. When the bakery's oven broke down one winter, Ahmed could have closed for a week. Instead, he worked all night by a fire stove to make sure the family still had bread. "You are not customers," he told them one day. "You are family." That girl? She's now in medical school. She works weekends at the bakery to help pay tuition. She says she studies to become a doctor, so I can be for others what he was for us, hope when there was none. Chapter 7. The parking lot attendant. WHO saved lost children in Atlanta, Georgia. The parking lot behind Fairview Mall isn't much to look at. Rows of cracked pavement, oil stains, flickering lights. The kind of place people forget exists the moment they walk into the mall. But for over 15 years, one man remembered everything about it. His name is Curtis. He worked the night shift as a parking lot attendant. Curtis wasn't a security guard. He wasn't paid to do more than keep an eye on parked cars. But he did more anyway. Between 2009 and 2022, Curtis helped reunite 27 lost or abducted children with their families. He never boasted. He never spoke to the press. He just noticed a child wandering alone near the dumpsters. A little girl sitting in the back of a stranger's truck, looking confused. A teenager crying behind the stairwell. Curtis would gently approach, offer a soda, ask where their parents were. He would radio someone, call the cops, stay with the kid until it was safe. In one case, he even followed a suspicious man for 15 minutes, keeping eyes on a child until police arrived and arrested the suspect for attempted kidnapping. No one asked him to do it. No one trained him. He just knew what it felt like to be forgotten. "I was a foster kid," he said once. "So when I see a child lost, I see myself." Today, Curtis still works the lot, still wearing the same jacket, still watching not for cars, but for anyone who needs help. Chapter 8. The prisoner. WHO stopped a riot in 2016 inside Monroe Correctional Complex in Washington state. Tensions were rising. 2 rival groups were on the verge of a violent clash. Guards were nervous. Inmates were tense. Rumors flew through the cell blocks like fire in dry grass. In the center of it all was a man named Isaac. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't feared. But he was respected. Isaac had been in prison for 18 years. Once in for armed robbery, he had changed. He studied psychology. He taught GED classes. He helped illiterate inmates write letters to their families. But when the threat of violence reached its peak, something strange happened. Isaac stood up in the common area, walked into the middle of both groups, and sat down. Just sat. In silence. Everyone stopped. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't posture. He just said, "This doesn't end well for any of us. We all lose. Every single time." Then he stood up, handed both group leaders a folded piece of paper with a poem he had written about brothers, blood, and breaking cycles. They read it and walked away. The riot never happened. Later that month, A guard who'd worked in the system for 30 years said, "I've never seen anything like that. One man, one poem, and a war died in his hands." Isaac was released in 2021. He now works as a conflict mediator in schools, helping teenagers avoid the mistakes he once made. Chapter 9. The Street Cleaner Who Became a Mentor. In Detroit, Michigan, every morning at 5 a.m., a woman named Denise rolled out her trash bin, grabbed her broom, and started sweeping the sidewalks. She wasn't hired by the city. She wasn't paid. She just wanted her block to look clean. But over time, something happened. Kids started following her. At first, they just watched. Then one picked up a trash bag. Another asked if she had extra gloves. And Denise, who had no kids of her own, started giving advice as she swept. Don't hang with boys who ain't got plans. If someone's always making you feel small, walk the other way. Every day you show up, you grow up. Soon, her 5 a.m. walks became gatherings. Sometimes for kids, sometimes 15. They called her Miss D. She taught them about responsibility, respect, how to dress for interviews, how to look people in the eyes. One day, a reporter asked her if she considered herself a mentor. She laughed. "I just clean up trash. Sometimes it sticks to people. I help shake it off." 10 years later, 37 of the kids from her block have graduated high school. 21 went to college. 2 became police officers. 1 is now a lawyer. And Denise still sweeps, still shows up, still reminds people that cleaning a street can also clean a life. Chapter 10. The Dishwasher. WHO saved a restaurant in a small seaside town in Maine. There's a restaurant called the Blue Lantern. Not fancy, not trendy, but beloved by locals. In 2020, when the pandemic struck, the owner, a kind man named Harold, was weeks away from shutting down for good. Sales dropped. Staff left. Bills piled up. One person stayed. A dishwasher named Kenny. Kenny barely spoke, lived in the back room, had no family, was never late, never complained, and always worked 2 shifts, even when sick. But one night, after overhearing Harold talking about closing the doors forever, Kenny quietly went home, sold his old pickup truck for $3,000, and handed the envelope to Harold the next morning. "You gave me a job when no one else would. I'm giving you a chance when you feel like no one else will." Harold refused. Kenny insisted. The money covered utilities for the next month, just enough time for the town to rally. A viral Facebook post brought in attention. Local reporters showed up. People ordered takeout just to help. The Blue Lantern survived. Today, the restaurant is thriving. Kenny, still in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes, humming old songs. When asked why he did it, he just said, "He saw me when I was invisible. I just returned the favor." Chapter 11. The Drifter on the Bridge. In Seattle, under the gray haze of a January morning, a man stood on the edge of the Aurora Bridge, shoes halfway off, eyes unfocused, fingers trembling. His name was Luke. He was 28, alone, done. He had written the note. He had texted goodbye. He had let go of hope. Then, from nowhere, a voice behind him said, "It's not your time, brother." Luke turned to see a man wrapped in layers of mismatched clothes, carrying a shopping cart. A homeless man. He didn't grab him. He didn't call the police. He just started talking about how he had once been there too. How he had lost everything. How he used to sleep under that same bridge. How he had tried to jump once and survived. They talked for an hour. Eventually, Luke stepped down, cried, collapsed. The drifter walked with him to a shelter, bought him a coffee, stayed with him until someone from a support center arrived. Then he disappeared. Luke never got his name. He calls him Bridge Man in therapy sessions. Now, Luke is a counselor for suicide prevention. He often stands near that same bridge, not to jump, but to watch, just in case someone else needs a voice like that. Chapter 12. The Old Woman Who Left Everything to Strangers. When 92-year-old Eleanor Thompson passed away in Cincinnati, no one expected much to come from her will. She had no children, no living relatives, a modest home, a tiny pension, some antiques. But when her lawyer opened the file, What he found stunned everyone. Eleanor had spent the last 20 years quietly investing small amounts in stocks and bonds. She rarely spent money, lived like she was still in the 1950s. No TV, no vacations. Her estate, worth $2.7 million. What she did with it was even more surprising. She left it not to a church, not to a charity, but to 127 children from low-income neighborhoods, all of whom she had never met. Each child would receive full college tuition, mentorship support, and a laptop if they graduated high school. Why? In a handwritten letter, Eleanor wrote, "I was the smartest girl in my school, but my family was too poor for college. I washed clothes while boys I tutored became lawyers. I want that cycle to stop with me." To this day, 91 of those students have enrolled in college. Some are already doctors, engineers, teachers, all because of a quiet woman with a quiet dream and extraordinary follow-through.